Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Dogboat333, and welcome back to our Time for the New Order, Last Days of Europe. Now, last video, let's see, we did pretty well. We passed a very valuable Housing Bill Act, which will give a lot of people some good access to housing. What else? We went ahead and, Saturday Night Massacre. We have the Will of the People. They do not. The Liberal Victory in Canada. Liberalism, the philosophy of our time? Question mark. So we did a good Affordable Housing Act. Our poverty rate should be going up very quickly, which is beautiful. What else? Oh yeah. We got exposed as horribly corrupt, and using COINTELPRO to target our own political allies. So yeah, we're really biding our time, crossing our fingers, and hope that we can get Glenn in and do well enough there. Thinking we might want to do... I'm thinking we start working on education. Let's test the waters. New, untied reforms have been inherent have the inherent risk of failing and becoming sinkholes for taxpayer dollars. Policy planners make predictions based on theory and advise accordingly, but a law's performance can be measured only after it's implemented, not before. Without caution, restore the hastiness of politicians who pine for reforms. America has seen 100 good laws passed in 100 days, and under failures that burden its treasury for little gain. For his part, the president is keen to remind the NPP congressmen and their constituents that lasting reform will come in due time. At the same time, he's authorized the cabinet to implement a backlog of policies at a small scale as test programs of some sorts. With them, we can acquire much-needed data on how well our reforms achieve their objectives without having expended too much money on abject failures. There we go. Terrible. Excellent, fantastic, good. Michigan's tilting towards the RDs. A good campaign, a mediocre campaign. It's a quiet night in the Stonewall Inn. Barely anyone noticed my scribbling notes in the corner. The corner of America is obscure, but it shares a tendency for aching introspection, abbreviated loneliness, hammered out by cheap glass cups. Beyond the occasional whisper and wordless glances, not much makes it out of a haze of anonymity, and long it may seem so. The haze is the only thing that separates this part of town from the moralizing get-lays of the rest of America. It's the only thing that keeps it safe. As I'm writing this, a pair of young men, in their 20s perhaps, one Latino, one Caucasian, are swerving to the aching beak of satisfaction. Their patterned shoes tap out a rhythm at once familiar and strange, just irregular enough to inject vitality while keeping pace with the beat. Their bodies trace patterns so bold they'd be scandalous anywhere else, but here in the trace of lips and hands on waist, it achieves careworn familiarity, like an elderly seamstress fixing on an old cardigan. If this had been a different country, perhaps they would become dancers. The lipstick and the gaudy dresses they wear would kill their careers, and a lot more besides in this one. America is home to the brave, but this land isn't free. Not for some. Not yet. For some, there is the freedom of the swirl and curve of dance, the celebration of joy in a world with so little else. Another man offers his hand, and I rise to dance. With a gentle rhythm and smoky swirls, I sense some vast and gentle ecstasy. With every sway, I come closer to its source. Life thrives in the strangest of places. I'm trying to think what we can do now to go ahead and help out. Okay, decision.no checks. Decision on no checks disabled. Let me think. We got some more Choppas. We'll put them in with Benson Jr. We'll train up some of these guys. Once again, Democratic strongman Barry Goldwater has talked to the Senate floor to speak out against our policies. This time he's rallied against what he termed reckless spending by the president on our welfare and education programs. After advocating for massive reduction in spending on government programs, Goldwater ended his tirade by quoting former President James Madison. Charity is no part of the legislative duty of the government, to thunderous applause from his Democratic cronies and plenty of our own supposed party brothers in the NPP. He is, as usual, completely wrong, but he's managed to trick plenty of our more easily led citizens into agreeing with him and demanding reduced government spending, often in areas they directly benefit from. If Goldwater has way, he's cut welfare programs up like a Thanksgiving turkey, denying millions of Americans the essential aid that they require to lift themselves out of poverty's clutches. Seems like he preferred government revenue to gather dust in a vault somewhere, but what good? What would be the good of that? The purpose of taxation is the funding of programs to benefit the taxpayer. And as a government of the United States, it is our duty to ensure Americans have the highest quality life possible. We cannot let vocal and influential reactionaries prevent us from achieving a bright future for every American. This nation cannot be truly great until not a single child goes hungry. An America worth fighting for. So I'm thinking... how are we going to go ahead and tank our popularity? And I remember there's an event chain over here that can really screw up our popularity if we do it wrong. Now, do we have time to do that? I don't think so at this point. So, focus.note autocomplete. So we're just going to do it real quick. Unjust Justice. America has come to realize it is a land of towering contrasts as much as it is a land of towering skylines. We preach the word of freedom, but also keep freedom away from the swamps of our people. We preach exercising the God-given right to vote, but also keep that right from those we deem unworthy of voting. So do we bluster and boast of the same liberties we supposedly cherish, but in the same breath order judges and sheriffs to stuff out the opportunity to cherish liberty for a great many Americans. We have come to government and seen the injustice that it seeped into its sinews, and have rightfully decided that it is the state of affairs that cannot stand. What is unjust must be set out as at last. Towards this, we must turn our stern gaze to the lawmen who had overseen the effection of unjust laws. There we go. Let's observe some court practices. Laws may come from Congress, but it's the humble courts which interpret the letter and spirit. Owing to this, men and women who extensively study America's labyrinth set of laws effectively decide how laws will look like to the American people. Should Congress and courts come into odds with one another, a situation will undoubtedly arise where any laws the former conceive will diverge significantly in wording by the time a nation's law enforcement receives a memorandum. There exists no better instance of this phenomenon than the extant legal system of our southern states, made by Dixiecrats and their supervisors, courts of laws from North Carolina to Texas, blowing out a free hand, implementing the implementation of civil rights within their jurisdiction. Sifting through their archives of verdicts and rulings, it is unfortunate, a burden we cannot do without. At least from there, kickstarting the dismantling of Jim Crow is as simple as replacing the powdered wigs, apparently keeping it aloft. Then we can do a racist prison system, ? One close look at prison tallies and registers across the country reveal a stark pattern. Colored men, predominantly from ghettos and gutters of its sprawling cities, filling more of its cells than whites. Another look at the records: loitering, petty thievery, minor brawls, sentenced by verdicts with half-decades behind the dank and fetid walls of a Grey Bar hotel. Oftentimes more. By the time the black man leaves the rusted iron chain to prisons, the court of public opinion will have judged him guilty again, and so they will remain paupers, left with no choice but break the law once more for their own sakes. Misjustice indeed, yet a misjustice tolerated at best, at worst encouraged. For decades, whenever the heavy hand of the law is reached, we must address this. Then we have the underlying problem. Hearings unheard. Every early missives somehow reported missing late past their schedule. Orders word and phrase changing as they climbed down on every rung in the ladder of law enforcement. Letters swapped into wholly new messages by the time they reach the common patrolman. Work continues as we bring the rights of man to the rights-deprived South. Work continues as ploddingly slow as it was since the days of Reconstruction. We cannot admit this to ourselves at this juncture that work cannot continue until we address the root from which these issues arose. If Dixiecrats aim to win the Civil War with 1,000 bleeding pinpricks, then we shall have to grab them by the stem and root them out all the way to the godforsaken tip. And then we'll do one more, and then we'll just go ahead and turn this off and actually do the focus normally. Brown v. Board of Education was a landmark court case which marked the country's first ever step towards true equality in a century. By ruling segregation in public schools is inherently void of the Constitution, the Supreme Court has shattered the old viney cobblestone walls which dot towns and cities nationwide, barring the black students from mingling with their white schoolmates. No matter how tenuous at the moment, colored children now have better legs with which to lift them and theirs out of their father's poverty thanks to this ruling. Our cause needs as many Brown versus boards as it can afford, for that great case alone has advanced with African Americans lot by leaps and bounds. The President's advisors have concluded that we can afford the hit to public opinion, a large share of it doubtless from those who would see the administration's forthcoming actions as tyrannical. President Kennedy tapped furiously at his typewriter, stopping only a sip from the glass of scotch at his side. There we go. The ice having melted long ago, Kenny's vigorously poured his thoughts onto the page in a stream of consciousness, knowing that the interns who wrote his speeches would clean it up later. It was fiery and passionate as all his speeches had been lately, filled with rhetoric and calls to action. Kenny was tired of having to kowtow the rights of the party, but as he paused to have the belt of scotch, he wondered if perhaps he could stand to rein it a bit, throw the right-wingers a bone. They were party brothers after all, and he couldn't control Congress around him. Despite the price dominance, big names like Eastland, Thurman, and Wallace still drew voters to the party, like Monster Flame, or Zapper. Frowning, Kennedy debated with himself if it would be wise to make a speech reassuring the right-wingers. Obviously, he couldn't give them any real concessions, but perhaps it was a good idea to change his language, scale back the bombast, assure them that his plan for civil rights wouldn't be as extreme as they feared. Sipping, Kennedy leaned back in his chair, furrowing a brow as his brain dragged him one way and his heart the other. Well, the heart wants what it wants. Let's go ahead and stamp out the flames of hate. It's been an oft-observed irony that the present laws of free speech often protect those whose very nature assumes that free speech is a sham. The unwavering blindness of Lady Justice, lawmen argue, dictates that all speech, no matter how hateful or spiteful towards the rights of others, must be placed under equal protection. Thus, one may find hate-mongers standing upon their soapboxes and radio towers, questioning why their victims should enjoy the very rights that they are using to browbeat them into submission. This is a farce that has gone on for far too long. Either these malcontents stick to the spirits of free speech, rather than abuse its words to the full extent, or they shall find themselves bereft of any speech at all. Alright, it's all come down to this, folks. A few days in the International Amphitheater in Chicago, Illinois. The primaries are over, delegates have been selected, and it's now time to see who will lead the RD party in the 1960 election. There are now only two viable candidates in a race that has seen many trying to win the keys to the White House. Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater and proud firebrand conservative Barry Goldwater, or Ohio Governor and famed astronaut John Glenn. For months, in debates on TV and radio, at rallies from coast to coast, and in living rooms and over dining tables of everyday Americans, the battle between Barry and John has raged. Pins with their faces and slogans like, "In your heart, you know he's right," and "Soar to new heights with Glenn." Posters, newspaper ads, cardboard hats, and all the memorabilia of a campaign seeking to win the chance to be the RD standard bearer, both proclaiming that only they can end the anomaly that is the NPP's Robert F. Kennedy, who now sits at 1600 Penn Avenue, the first non-Republican or Democrat who holds the highest office in the land since before the U.S. Civil War over 100 years ago. But before they can focus on the NPP, they have to get their nod of the convention. But as the night drags on and ballot after ballot shows little movement between Goldwater and Glenn, finally one of the few favorite sons left on the ballot, they're only there because of some delegates hoped against hope that their chosen candidate could serve as a compromise candidate finally folded. So for the last ballot, the result is clear. John Glenn. Oh, it's glorious, ladies and gentlemen. So we're reviewed now as a champion of social justice. Luckily, we can't be shot. Okay, hold on. There you go. Beautiful. What did I... Okay, I did disable it. Gibraltar Dam is finally finished. Congratulations, Iberia. A great conspiracy. Perhaps it might be true. Alright, I think this is the first one. The Constitution promises justice to all, but any fool can see that falsehood. The grinding machinery of justice crushes many undeserving of punishment through its unstoppable gears, cruelty and unjustly ruining the lives of thousands of Americans every year. Like so many of America's institutions, our courts are as tainted and as corrupt as any despots. Like so many things in America, the courts are worse to blacks. African Americans, though deserving of the same rights as any other Americans, are subjected to endless humiliation and poor treatment every day, and when they fight back, they're ground through the courts like the lowliest common criminal. It's our duty to scour the taint and corruption from our courts to provide fair and equal justice to every American, no matter who they are. But like all our reforms, it won't be easy. To start with, we should establish a committee to scrutinize court practices across the nation and identify the blight so we might tear it out. The results are in, and they're pretty much what we expected. Our Justice Committee's report has confirmed our suspicions that America's justice institutions are completely corrupt in need of reforms to curb the horrible practices they engage in. Our courts, it seems, have little to no integrity. Like we do. Shit. Judges and juries alike are horrifically prejudiced against African Americans, who are both found guilty more often and receive harsher sentences than whites on trial for the same crimes. Blacks are frequently denied the judicial rights promised to all in the Constitution, or often hoodwinked or forced into confessing by racist cops intent on sending black men to prison for no other reason than the color of their skin. This injustice, perpetrated upon Americans by the very system meant to uphold it, is utterly disgusting. It's a total subversion of everything America stands for. We have to fix it, and now. And America Lady Justice is anything but blind. It's time she was blindfolded again. Wouldn't take her to take this regular sword either. Our poverty rate is going up very quickly, which is very nice. President Kenny lay in bed staring at the ceiling as his wife read beside him, one of those Vosh's Victorian romances she loved so much. He was thinking about cages. It was Harry Truman, he recalled, who once called the White House the finest prison in the world. He wasn't far off from the truth there. All across America, right this second, millions of people were behind bars, some of them destined for electric chair, and plenty of them should never have been there in the first place. Everyday prisoners were beaten, abused, and had their basic rights withheld from them. And this, thought the president, is what we call justice. He had to do something. America's rotten justice system hung over his head like the sword of Damocles, swaying to and fro, and he knew that he wouldn't be free of its infernal presence until he scoured the taint of injustice from America. Tomorrow, he'd begin working on a bill to reform America's prisons and end their cruel, discriminatory, and unjust practices. Hang in there, fellas, he thought, as he drifted off to sleep. It won't be this way for much longer. Who watches the Watchmen? I do. The first and most glaring issue in America's blighted justice system is our prisons. To be incarcerated in America is to be thrust into an abysmal pit of cruelty, depravity, and ironically, hideous injustice. Our prisons are cages of torment and suffering where they should be a tool to reform and rehabilitate convicts. And like everything else, it's worse if you're black. Our prisons are torture chambers filled with people who have no right to be there. This must change if we are to reform the nation's mechanisms of justice. We must bring this justice to those without access to it, and give those who are unjustly treated a second chance. What we have here is a failure to communicate. What do we want to do? Could fight for schools. We might want to fight for schools, honestly. Maybe fight for workers. Polls are updated. Death of a justice. A liberal. Okay. Fucking libtard, am I right? Okay, the polls are updated. Let's check and see. Toss up, tilt RD. This is what I really worry about. All tilts. So it's a lot tiltier than it was before. I'm feeling a heck of a lot better about it. The time has come to draft our prison reform bill to end the horrific injustice faced by everyday by American convicts. Serving a sentence doesn't disqualify a man from having the same basic rights and protections guaranteed from every American. It's time to move from the realm of ideals into reality. We can't let inhuman penal colonies be run in America, but at the same time, changing such an entrenched institution overnight will be far from easy. Instead of going all in, we could instead issue some moderate reform to fix a major problem to try to deal with prisons stolen steadily. We could also preserve our political cap by just issuing token reforms that overlook our opponents could hardly oppose without looking overly draconian. But will that do any good? The fact is that injustice in America must be remedied. The only question remains how strong we must make it. Let's go all in. I'm assuming we'll be able to tow a middle line option eventually. Or have an option to water it down a bit. Have a nice center option. Ooh. In a press conference today that dominated headlines across the country today, President Robert F. Kennedy has announced that Thurgood Marshall, currently a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, will be nominated to the newly vacant seat on the Supreme Court. Marshall, a graduate of Howard Law School and an experienced civil rights litigator, would be the first African-American to serve on the highest court of the land. This appointment would surely mark a turning point in American history. However, some in Congress are not so willing to see such a point turn to the first base. Many senators from the South are directly reliant on white voter blacks who aren't well disposed towards putting a black man on the Supreme Court. Several members on the Senate have already put out statements to the press issuing their firm opposition, although nobody's come out and said that it's due to Marshall's race. Instead, the release mentions the dangers of, quote, liberal judicial activism, unquote, and other such phrases. Clearly, the appointment of Marshall will be a political fight for the ages. The right thing, the right time, the right man, and the right place, I hope. There seems to be plenty of room for... What? President Kennedy has nominated Thurgood Marshall to fill a vacancy of the Supreme Court of the U.S. Marshall's legal career has spanned multiple decades, including being chief counsel of the NAACP Defense Fund and Education Fund, and being appointed to the Supreme Court of Appeals in 1961. His confirmation will make him the first black justice in the history of the Supreme Court. This is naturally considered considerable controversy. While the center and most Republicans support his nomination, it's gone over like a bowl of cold soup to the conservative Democrats and segregationist far rights. Perhaps we'll be able to negotiate with the holdouts in order to secure the historical nomination. You know, we probably don't need to do this, but we need... I think we need as much unity as we can get on this appointment. Once again, the abominable Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater has come along to try and ruin our hard work. Despite our prison reform bill having support from all the power blocks in Congress, including the Democrats, Goldwater has made a public show of his opposition. It seems like he'll protest any legislation we put forward, no matter what it is. He's trotting out the usual arguments of states' rights, calling the Senate crowd for imposing new law and order standards federally, rather than leaving it up to the states, To one experienced in politics, Goldwater is clearly trying to position himself as a tough law and order politician to the public, most likely as a preamble to a presidential run in 68. How's that going for you, Barry? Goldwater's president, that's a sobering thought. Thankfully, for the time being at least, he's powerless to prevent the cause of justice, and our bills sailed through Congress, making our prison reform law. Thousands of unjustly treated convicts will now experience greater quality of life and have access to the same rights as every other American. No thanks to Goldwater. Deal with it, Barry. With loud cheers and celebrations on the floor of Miami Beach Convention Center in Miami Beach, Florida has greeted Robert F. Kennedy as they formally accept the nomination of the MPP to run for a second term as President of the U.S. of A. As the first White House occupant to never be a Republican or Democrat since Millard Fillmore left in 1853, it was only natural that RFK would get another crack at 4 more years in the highest office in the land. There were two primary challengers. Senator Margaret Chase Smith of Maine represented a new business-oriented faction of the far-right NPP, and Center NPP leader Michael Harrington, both seeking to bring the party and the nation more in line with their preferred pact. However, not either won more than a handful of delegates in the primaries, and both were overshadowed by the current president's popularity and leadership within the party. Now that RFK secured the nomination with little in the way of opposition, the plan is now to face RDs and ensure that the past 4 years wasn't a fluke in American political history, but the start of a new two-party system. 4 more years. We're doing well so far. Get out of here, NPP. Terrible RD campaign. The Midwest has been best described as flat, empty, and where people are born, buried alive, and spend their time doing little but whirling their lives away as the crown grows and the reign of years erodes the hills. Its people are almost fanatically proud of a wholesome Americana, their unchanging pastoral lives. They have souls of clay, ready to be molded by the next charismatic stranger with a suitcase in his hand and a smile on his face. It's their very plasticity makes Midwesterners politically dangerous, a crucial battleground in every election. The pendulum of the Midwest can make or break presidents, their allegiance aligning from a candidate to candidate like swinging of a metronome. Unfortunately, it appears that though the favored Midwest have swung thoroughly in Goldwater's direction. Over the past few weeks, he's been touring around the Midwest, giving speeches at town halls against the president, particular focus being our recent prison reform bill, which Goldwater's presented to his malleable audience as being weak on crime and perilous of ideal consistence for old dear. Goldwater's managed to stroke the reliable global Midwesterners into a fury. Protesters have been held against our reforms in almost every major city in the region as Midwestern sentiment towards any of the president turns sour. We can only hope that the infamously changeable Midwest will swing back to our side, or we may soon find ourselves in trouble come 68. Well, about that. Okay, we got some more Democrats to prove it. So that's what, 35, 55, 56, 72. So that's above 2/3, so even if there was a filibuster mechanic, which I don't think there is, we'd win. Stamp out the fans' hate. Oh no. Horrible news has just come out of Memphis, Tennessee. Just after 6 in the evening, civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot while talking with his colleagues on the balcony of a Lorraine motel. The bullet, fired from a boarding house across the street, entered through his cheek, smashing his jaw and penetrating into his spinal cord. Dr. King was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, where he was pronounced dead in just an hour. In a short address to the press at St. Joseph's, Jesse Jackson, the well-known organizer and ally of Dr. King, mourned the fallen activist, claiming that Dr. King died in his arms. Jackson stated that this tragedy must not be a mere partisan issue, but one that unites us all, son and daughters of God, to higher calling. Fuck, this is out of control. Uh-oh. America grows further divided, which, if I'm not mistaken, is gonna help. Oh, fuck, it's not divided enough. God damn it. Justice Thurgood Marshall is confirmed. A man who once declared that you do what you think is right and let the law catch up will now sit on the most important judicial institution in the United States. In a decisive vote in the Senate today, Thurgood Marshall was confirmed as the newest Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Marshall will be the first African-American to serve on the court, and its confirmation is undoubtedly a victory of the civil rights movement, which he himself has worked tirelessly to advance. During this judicial hearing, a number of conservative senators railed against judicial activism and made a variety of statements that many commentators have called little better than dog whistles. Some even asked whether or not Marshall had ties to American Bolsheviks. This strategy failed, however. At the press conference today, Justice Marshall has stated his gratitude to the Senate and to the people of America before posing for pictures with his 2 sons and his wife, the civil rights activist Cecilia Suyat Marshall. This is truly a historic moment for the nation, representing the triumph of justice over institutional racism. Well, let's hope so anyway. So, we'll be points with first African American justice, and we'll get prep events, apparently. More campaign exam. Good. Excellent. I'll take it. I'll try to get some more PP. Apparently we can't do that quite yet. Could always target Democrats. More like Democrats, am I right? A simple farm wagon, brown and faded green, pulled by a pair of mules through the streets of Atlanta. Dignitaries, celebrities, men and women of all faiths gathered in a church at Ralph Abernathy remarks on one of the darkest hours of mankind. 100,000 people crowding 3.5 miles of roadway, watching the procession go by. Coretta Scott King, Jesse Jackson, Andrew Young, John Lewis, Walter Reuther, Mahalia Jackson, singing "Take My Hand, Precious Lord." More tears and grief than any human mind could possibly comprehend. At the end, everyone sings "We Shall Overcome," and everyone prays that they will. Someday. It's probably a good idea to go after the Klan. What do you want to do? I'm thinking we could go down this, get more poverty. Testimony from the people, ports of the poor, specter of hunger. Let's try No Child Left Behind. Actually, we'll do... Fuck, what do we do? We'll do this, then do No Child Left Behind, and hopefully we'll have time to go on to Tokyo. Capital, by necessity, knows more about the true state of a union than its own people. However, it is not omniscient. The people with which it bases its political policies relies on a complicated hierarchy of departments, agencies, and offices. All of them are staffed with normal employees and managers, and humans can err and possess their own agendas, as Nixon tests. President Kennedy's ambitious road trip provides us with an opportunity to learn more about the American people's plight than tabulation sheets processed in D.C., giving our planners more information for the administration's reforms. Additionally, it allows us to offer them their government's and tangible presence to reach out and assuage them of their worries of being left unheard yet again. Well, there we go. Where's the election? Oh, there it is. Shit. No, wait, that's not it. That's a broken one. Did I break the... Oh, there we go. I think it's back now. Yep, there we are. Okay. Decision.no checks. There we go. Got some more city factories. Let's get working on some infrastructure, I think. We'll help out the West Coast first. Do a cross-country effort, I think. Yeah. We're gonna have the best damn infrastructure in this country. Washington, D.C. already has the best infrastructure in the country. There we go. Beautiful. There we are. They wear no badges, no armbands. By day, they go without masks. On weekend nights, they get together, the tradesmen, the teachers, the shopkeepers, and they doff the white hoods and pointed hoods and meet on the hills above town. They drag forward the man with the wrong skin color who was seen talking to the wrong girl, and they hang him high. He watches those faceless specters through tear-washed eyes as his lungs gasp and his throat collapses. He's left swinging in the light in the morning. These are the Ku Klux Klan, the ghosts of a regime that died 100 years ago, stubbornly refusing to give up the archaic beliefs of our forebears. The KKK infests with southern states like a plague of termites in a rotten house, burrowing the state into state governments and institutions to spread their influence. Once they've taken hold, they pump their filth into the minds and hearts of Southerners, ever growing like a tumor. It's time we do something about these masked cowards. We need to break their influence and take back the South, but it won't be easy. If we don't do this with finesse, we'll likely spark civil dissent around the South and have to endure political strife in Washington if it looks like we're targeting the Klan because they have different beliefs to us. We could try drafting a bill to ban them outright, or we could try going under the table. Either way, they won't take it lying down. So I'll save real quick, because I forget how exactly we need to fuck this up. Let's just try banning them. Writing a bill is easy, but getting it passed is tough, especially when the Congress is packed with reactionaries who will filibuster anything that reeks even slightly progressivism. To get this past our enemies, we need to draft this perfectly and go over every word to make sure that there's as little to excitement as possible. We can't facilitate forever. The time has come to get down to brass tacks. Keeping in mind the First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech in our association, do we want to rip out the loopholes and ban the Klan outright, or try to drive them into the underground instead and save ourselves a fling in Congress? Decapitate the Hydra. Yeah, that works. Where we go? Let's do oil processing, I guess. Our ban on the KKK has been a pure, unmitigated nightmare. Not only has it failed to stop their now illegal activities, it turns out to have been completely unenforceable as Southern police, most likely Klan members themselves, refuse to break up Klan meetings and arrest known leaders. Klan affiliates have been screaming themselves hoarse on almost every radio station that broadcasts south of the Mason-Dixon line. Free speech rallies have been held in several major southern cities, and as a cherry on top of this Sunday, we're getting whipped every which way in Washington by the Democrats and the rightists in their own party. Even Republicans aren't too keen on it. To make matters worse, if that's possible, Klan is planning a huge rally atop Stone Mountain in Georgia, where they're going to burn a gigantic wooden cross that will be visible all over Atlanta. We have no choice but to send the army to watch over the gathering and keep the peace, but even that will leave the law and order teetering on a knife's edge. If this goes wrong, the South could go up like a pile of dry wood struck by lightning. We can only hope this doesn't turn ugly. When their backs against the wall, men who burn the symbol of their worship are liable to burn anything. I smell smoke in the wind. Southwest, likely, toss-up, leaning. How about the deep south? Decision.no checks. There we go. What time is it? It's 10. Okay. Uh-oh. It's still unclear who shot first. Before the cross had even been lit, tensions were high atop Stone Mountain. Turnout was several times what we expected, and our troops were massively outnumbered by Klan members, both masked and boldly unmasked, many armed. A single gunshot was all it took to light the powder keg, and Stone Mountain erupted into sudden horrific violence as our troops opened fire on the crowds and Klansmen followed suit. By the time the shooting stopped and the smoke had cleared, 25 bodies lay beneath the smoldering cross on the mountaintop. 4 soldiers and 21 civilians, all suspected Klansmen. Their wives and daughters wept on television screens all over America. The South is ready to explode, and the rest of the country isn't much better. People are in an uproar over what they see as the government murdering people who are protesting against breaking their First Amendment. Radio demagogues ask whom the Yankee hit squad will go after next. Needless to say, this is bad for us. Goldwater, Thurman, and their allies are screaming red-face in Congress. There's not a newspaper or news program in the nation on our side right now. Even many of our staunchest political allies are distancing themselves from us. By now, the country is in shock, and all we can hope is that it fades quickly. But, sitting alone in his own office and thinking of his murdered brothers, the president has a bad feeling that the Stone Mountain Massacre, as we're calling it, will stain his legacy like nicotine. And tears flow like the Mississippi. Well, it's not like your legacy isn't already stained already, Johnny boy, so, I mean... We have new rifles. We'll go and implement these bad boys. There we go. After years of development, the celebrated director, Stanley Kubrick, has come out with his latest epic, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Set in the next millennium, 2001 centers around the German spaceship Entdeckung 1 on a long journey to Jupiter. Its crew, Andreas Bogenmann and Franz Teich, are helped in their day-to-day activities by the artificial intelligence EPAC. However, as the film goes on, it becomes clear that EPAC has decided to kill the crew. An intense struggle made all the more nerve-wracking by Kubrick's long takes and understated sound design. Bogenmann is able to deactivate EPAC and mournfully sings Stille Nacht as his circuits are disconnected. Bogenmann then realizes that the mission of Entdeckung 1 is to investigate an alien monolith orbiting Jupiter. The monolith transports Bogenmann across space and time, transforming him into a bizarre space fetus floating beside Earth. Audiences have been divided over the film. Some call it meaningless drivel, while others have found it to be most enjoyable, especially when paired with certain substances. Whatever the reaction, Kubrick has certainly created a memorable feature film. My god, it's full of stars. Research slots available. Engine tank. We're working on that. Yeah, now I'm going to be effects of a king riots. Get some more PP. There we go. Best of luck to him. Polls are updated. Operation commenced. Toss-ups. The RDs have a south. Jersey and Pennsylvania are tilting. But that should be flippable. Minnesota's a toss-up. California's a toss-up, which is huge. If we get California, it doesn't even matter necessarily who else we get. And it's toss-ups all over the place elsewhere, too. Actually, the Great Lakes is going back to the RDs. Oh, wow, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, Johnny. Johnny, I got you two mixed up. I gotta remember, Johnny, Robert's the one who's still alive. I gotta remember that. I'm sorry, Robert. I have a lot of respect for Robert Kennedy. I think I've said this before, but he's, I think, the greatest president we never had. But, you know, some things we have to sacrifice certain things. Okay, we'll do the poorest of the poor. New York, Chicago, San Fran, and 100 other different cities. Faded posters of smiling families and sunny days bestrew the grimy brick walls, marking the seedier parts of town. Cloistered houses, arranged in haphazard patterns, dwell under the shadow of glamours and ritzy skyscrapers. Its inhabitants amble from work to home and work again, though filled with worries about rent and food bills and nothing but. They have no pride, no hope, no future beyond the 30 days they have left to pay for the right to live. These are downtrodden of America. They're countless tired and poor who hang their heads low while its few fortunate hold their head high. This country cannot move forward as one without its lowly. How fortunate it is that the government attends to them before anything else. The citizen's basic income experiment. God, he's doing the yang stuff. I'm sorry. I'm doing this to you. Why is it that in America, stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific, with all the resources that owning most of the continents will provide, still has a class of people mired in absolute poverty? Why is it in a nation that makes many people food, and the richest farmlands on this planet still have people starving? Why is it that in a country with the grandest skyscrapers and all the lands to build and grow communities, we still have tens of thousands of homeless people? Why is it in a nation with the best schools and hospitals that ever our enemies' leaders have sent their children to study in, or have had their cancers cured, have illiteracy at all, or have millions dying in pain and misery? The simple fact is that for far too long we've expected every American to lift themselves up, to climb up out of a deep trench of poverty by their own merit, strengths, and abilities, to join the American dream that we all share. That system, which we all call meritocracy, and take such pride in, has a great flaw, though. There are some people who, no matter how hard they work, no matter how hard their struggle, how much they save, how careful they are with their health, are struck by the misfortune of fate, and are cast down into that pit of despair, unable to scramble out. In the White House, I receive stories like these every day via letter and telegram. And as I visit the state and city, every state and city and county, it is heartbreaking to want to help those people through little or no fault of their own, have been pushed into the trench of poverty. So instead, I say let's help those who need it. Everyone in that deep, dark hole that they were dumped into. Those that are sick, we should heal. Those who have been maimed, we should lift up. Those who are homeless, we should shelter. Those are the goals scraping by. We should give them a helping hand. That is the goal of Social Security, providing a baseline, supporting those who need it, giving every American a chance to live the dream, to reach out a hand, to hand down a ladder, to pull up everyone from the trenches of poverty. More security for the American family. And with that, we're going to have to call it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of this content feature, go ahead and hit the subscribe button for more uploads every weekday, as well as every Saturday. If you have any comments, feedback, concerns, anything of the sort, go and leave in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get and appreciate any little feedback you might have for me. If you want to see me direct my way, I have a Patreon down link below. If you want to chat or play games, I have a Discord. If you want to see me do the sort of stuff live, I have a Twitch, all of which are down linked below. Thank you as always for watching, ladies and gentlemen. My name has been Goldwater333, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.